They made Tavena Oris surrender her hands before they cut her name from the war roster. Not her cloak, not her rank, her hands. Because if the court took her hands, Tavena would not merely lose her post, she would lose the only language the war dragons still trusted. The black, airy command yard waited inside the throat of an old volcano, all black stone, hanging command chains, and iron galleries crowded with captains who had never cleaned blood from a dragon's wing. At the far end of the yard, 12 war dragons stood behind the obsidian gate, armored for the Eastern campaign before moonrise. Tavena stood alone before them in a gray interpreter's coat. At her throat, where a true royal interpreter should have carried a living flame mark, there was only bare skin. Lord Interpreter Val Merrick held the white dragonbone dismissal blade as if it were a holy thing. Before him lay the black command leather where Tavena's name had been burned 8 years ago in letters small enough to insult her. Tavena Oris, silent, handkeeper, lower, airy. By decree of Dragon King Serev Kade, Val announced, Tavena Oris is removed from all duties of dragon interpretation, battle readiness correction, and lower airy command attendance. Her unauthorized influence over royal war dragons is judged unfit before active war. Approval moved through the galleries in a low, satisfied wave. Tavena did not look at them. She looked at Arvith. The oldest war dragon pressed his left claw into the ash. 3 small circles. Pain. Wing root. Do not lift. No captain noticed. No flame scribe wrote it down. Val did not even glance toward him. Tavena's fingers curled once, then still. Hands forward, Val said. The yard quieted. This was why they had come. Before sunset, her signals would be cut from command record. Before moonrise, the dragons would fly east. If she resisted, cold iron would be locked around her fingers until no dragon could read them again. Tavena laid both hands on the black leather. High above, Dragon King Serev Kade watched from the command balcony, his dark flame mark burning low at his throat. He had signed the replacement order 3 nights ago. The ink had dried before Tavena was summoned. That was the part she had not been allowed to answer. A king could call it necessity. A court could call it order. But every dragon in the lower airy had gone quiet the morning his seal appeared. Val leaned close, his smile hidden from the galleries. Confess that your false signs caused unrest in the lower airy. Give the court a clean reason to erase you. Tavena lifted her eyes. No, the word landed without heat. Val's smile thinned. No, I did not cause unrest. Then what did you do? Tavena looked past him to the dragon claw marking pain into ash. I listened. A few nobles laughed. Val's sleeve brushed the command stand. His right hand dipped beneath the black leather for half a breath. When it came back, a red grain clung beneath his thumbnail. Tavena saw it. Her pulse changed. Not fear, recognition, but she did not name it yet. Some truths became more dangerous when spoken before the witness was ready. Valu pressed the dragonbone blade to the first letter of her name. At the gate, Arvath growled. The sound was not rage. It was pain forced into a throat too proud to scream. Serev straightened. Val's eyes flicked toward the dragon, then back to Tavena. Fear crossed his face quickly, and anger covered it faster. Proceed, he said, and cut into the T. All 12 dragons lowered their heads. Not to the Dragon King, not to the flame-marked interpreter. To Tavena. Silence struck the yard so hard even the command chains stopped ringing. Val snapped toward the gate and lifted his marked hand. Orange fire flared bright at his throat. Warline, heads high, wings ready, the East Tower horn answered. The dragons did not move. Warline, Val said again, sharper. Obey. Arvath turned his head away. Then the second dragon did. Then the third. One by one, the war dragons refused his voice. Val had not wanted the dragons obedient. Tavena understood that now. He had wanted them unstable enough for the court to fear any language except his. He seized her wrist. Majesty, see what she has done? She has trained royal beasts to reject lawful fire. Arvath lunged. The obsidian gate screamed beneath the blow of his skull. Guards scattered. Black-red flames sparked between his teeth. Serev descended the balcony stairs. No trumpet announced him. The yard made room because power had entered it. Release her, he said. Val held tighter. She is the cause. I said release her. This time, the words carried the weight of execution. Val let go. Tavena knew what would happen if she raised her hands after dismissal. Val would call it interference. The captains would call it contamination. Serev could order iron around her fingers before sunset. Arvath pressed his claw into the ash again. Pain. Wing root. Do not lift. Tavena lifted her hands anyway. She did not command. She signed. I see it. Do not rise. Breathe under the pain. Arvath's fire died behind his teeth. Slowly, the old dragon lowered himself until his wounded wing rested against the ash. Beneath the armor plate, black blood shone along torn membrane. Across the command stand, Val folded his right hand into his sleeve. Too late. Tavena had already seen the red grain beneath his nail darken when Arvath's blood touched ash. The other dragons settled around Arvath in a protective crescent, facing Tavena while turning their armored backs on Val. Serev stopped at the foot of the stairs. He had watched men kneel before fire all his life. He had watched captains obey, nobles flatter, prisoners beg. But he had never watched a war dragon in pain become calm, because a woman without a flame mark lifted two scarred hands and told it that its hurt had been seen. Serev looked first at the wound beneath Arvath's armor, then at Tavena's scarred hands, not at Val, not at the command leather, because the truth had reached him before the court did. He had signed away the only person in the yard who had been reading pain. What did you sign? Serev asked. Tavena looked at the king who had replaced her with a flame-marked lyre. The thing your majesty never asked me to read. His jaw tightened. And that is? Pain. The black command leather did not speak. That was what made the yard colder. It only held the half-cut ruin of her name while Arvath dragged one claw through the ash. Not random scratches. Not beast marks. A sentence in the dying dragon hand Tavena had taught in secret. False order. No one spoke. A flame scribe dropped his iron pen, and the sound struck the black stone like a verdict. Val did not look confused. That was what Tavena noticed first. He looked too late. Arvath was not finished. His claw cut 3 more marks into the black ash, slower this time, each one deep enough to scrape sparks from stone. Not from her. Not for war. For slaughter. Serev's flame mark went dark at his throat. Because the first dragon had not accused Tavena Oris. It had accused the campaign itself. The Eastern war horn sounded a second time. This time, none of the dragons turned toward the gate. They turned toward the sealed campaign map. It hung behind the command balcony in a frame of black iron, large enough for every captain to see. Red enamel rivers cut across it like wounds. Brass pins marked enemy towers. Thin chains marked the first assault routes, each stamped with the Dragon King's seal. At moonrise, those lines would become law. Every dragon would fly where the map told it to die. Arvath stared at the map. Then he dragged one claw through the ash again. Map. The sign was crude because pain stiffened his wing, but Tavena knew it. She had taught it in soot beside feeding troughs. long before any captain believed a war dragon could remember routes without fire command. Val spoke before anyone could ask her. Old Panic. The beast reacts to campaign sound, not meaning. Tavena did not look away from Arvath. He said map. A murmur rose through the captains. Val turned sharply. You are dismissed. You have no authority to interpret. She has authority to answer a direct royal question, Serev said. Even the captains stopped pretending they had not heard. Val's face shifted by less than a breath. Calculation, not fear. Serev looked to the nearest captain. Lower the campaign map. The captain hesitated only once before bowing. Chains groaned. The iron-framed map descended from the balcony, scraping sparks from the black wall. As it came down, the dragon shifted behind the gate. Not forward. Listening, Val stepped beside the map. Majesty, the eastern roster seals before moonrise. Delay will cost us the first strike. Then truth should hurry, Serev said. The map struck the yard floor between Tavena and the dragons. Black wax sealed the lower edge in 3 places. The Dragon King's crest, the War Council's mark, and Val Merrick's interpreter flame. Serev saw the 3rd seal. Interpreter seals are not placed on flight routes. Val did not hesitate. They are when unstable signal contamination requires command correction. There it was. Not defense. Trep. He had prepared a lawful name for the crime before anyone knew the crime existed. That was why he frightened her more than the blade. Val did not need chaos. He knew how to make murder look properly witnessed. Tavena looked at him. You wrote me into the danger before you erased me from the roster. Val smiled faintly. You overestimate your importance. No, she said. You underestimated what the dragons remembered. Valiel turned to the king. Majesty, every moment this woman speaks, the beasts grow bolder. Let me burn the lower seal and issue fresh command before discipline collapses. Arvath's head lifted. Not in rage. Recognition. Val had not failed to calm the dragons. He had never meant to calm them. A frightened court would always choose fire over hands. Tavena stepped in front of the map. Several guards moved. Serev's hand went to the sword at his hip. No one touches her. The guards stopped. Tavena felt every stare strike her back. Her wrist still burned where Val had gripped it, but she kept her hands visible. That mattered now. Everything that mattered was in her hands. If I read this, she said, I set a condition. The court inhaled at the audacity. Serev studied her for one hard breath. You are in no position to bargain. No, Tavena said. I am in the only position that matters. I can read what your fire cannot. Val laughed once. She presumes to negotiate with the throne. Tavena did not look at him. No. I am refusing to translate a death order into obedience. Something dark passed through Serev's face. One reading, he said. Not pardon. One truth, Tavena answered. Not obedience. Accepted. Tavena raised one hand toward Arvath. Not command. Question. Show me where. The old dragon lowered his head. His claw dragged through the ash, slow and deliberate, drawing a broken line that matched the northern flight chain on the map. Then he struck the ash 3 times beneath a red enamel ridge marked as empty sky. Tavena turned to the map. The ridge was not empty. A thin, black scoring hid beneath the red enamel, almost invisible unless one knew where to look. Not a route mark. A killing funnel. Any dragon flying through it would descend between 2 cliff mouths where chain bolts could tear open its wings before it reached fire range. A captain swore under his breath. Val snapped. Speculation. Tavena touched nothing. Then remove the red enamel. No, Val said too fast. Serev looked at him. The yard heard the mistake. Tavena kept her eyes on the map. If the root is clean, the enamel can bear a king's heat. Val's right hand vanished into his sleeve again. Serev saw it this time. Show your hand. Val bowed his head but not his body. Majesty, we are losing command discipline. Your hand. One breath passed. Then Val slowly drew out his right hand. The red grain beneath his thumbnail had darkened almost black. Arvath growled once. Tavena lifted 2 fingers. Wait. The dragon obeyed. Not because she commanded him, because she asked in a language that did not lie. Serev stepped closer to the map. His flame mark burned low, blue at the edges. Burn the enamel. A flame scribe lifted his torch. Val moved. Not toward Tavena, toward the lower seal. He struck it with the dragon bone dismissal blade, trying to cut through his own interpreter mark before royal fire touched the map. Tavena caught his wrist. The blade turned against her palm. Pain opened bright and thin across her skin, but she did not let go. The galleries gasped. Val stared at her as if the fireless woman had put a blade to his throat. She tightened her bleeding grip. Not this time. Serev's shadow fell over both of them. Blood slipped from Tavena's palm onto Val's wrist. He tried to pull away. She held him harder. The flame scribe touched fire to the red enamel. It blistered, then peeled back. Beneath the false root, a second line appeared in black command ink. Not enemy ink, royal ink. And at the end of the killing funnel, hidden under Val's seal, was a mark Tavena had seen only once before, burned into a dead dragon's jaw after a failed winter assault. Sacrifice acceptable. Serev did not move. For one terrible second, the Dragon King looked less like a man who had found treason and more like a man who had found his own hand on the knife. Arvath opened his wounded wing and screamed. This time, the sound did not strike the gate. It struck the king, because the mark was not enemy code. It was royal command ink. Val's voice came thin, but steady. Royal command ink cannot be forged. That was the trap inside the truth. If the mark was real, then someone with the king's authority had ordered the slaughter. The scream had not ended before the War Council chose what it feared more than treason. Proof. Seal the map. Lord Captain Rovan barked from the lower gallery. 2 guards lunged forward with black wax rods. Tavena stepped between them and the exposed root. Her cut palm was still bleeding. The blood had run into the lines of her hand and gathered at the base of her fingers, warm and bright against the ash-gray skin the court had just tried to make useless. No, she said. Rovan stared at her as if a servant had struck him. The evidence belongs to the crown, and the crown decides what evidence is safe enough to survive. The slaughter mark belongs to the dragons, Tavena said. Val Merrick gave a small laugh. His voice had steadied since the map revealed royal command ink. And that steadiness frightened Tavena more than panic would have. Listen to her, he said. A dismissed handkeeper now claims ownership over royal war record. Serev turned on him. You will speak when asked. Val bowed, but the bow was too shallow to be submission. Majesty, I only repeat the law. Royal command ink cannot be forged. The mark is either false, which means she has manipulated the reading, or it is true, which means a lawful authority placed it there. The War Council seized the sentence like men grabbing shields. Royal ink answers only royal blood, one elder said. Or a sealed command office, another added. Or the king's own flame. Every word moved the accusation away from Val and toward the throne. Tavena felt the trap close. Val did not need them to believe him innocent. He only needed them to fear where the truth pointed. Serev stood very still. The dark mark at his throat had not relit. Without it, He looked less like the invincible Dragon King and more like a man standing inside a weapon built from his own name. Bind the fireless woman, Rovin said, until the map is purified. Arvath growled. Tavena lifted 2 fingers without looking back. Wait. The old dragon swallowed the sound, but smoke leaked through his teeth. Serev saw the sign. So did Vol. That was when Tavena understood the next danger. Vol had not only wanted her erased, he wanted her hands feared. Every time the dragons listened to her, he could call it contamination. Every time she saved them, he could call it rebellion. Serev looked from Arvath to her bleeding palm. No iron around her hands, Serev said. Then, colder, draw a chain on her fingers, and you answer to me before you answer to law. The words did not pardon her. They did not clear her. But in that yard, with the war council circling like knives, they kept her language alive. Vol's eyes narrowed. Tavena turned back to the map. The ink was not forged. The council fell quiet for the wrong reason. Val smiled faintly. You admit it, then. I said it was not forged. She lifted her bloody hand toward the lower seal. I did not say it was first written. Serev's gaze sharpened. Explain. Command ink remembers its first order. Interpreter seals can correct how that order is read. She looked at the exposed, killing funnel. The first order could have been royal. The correction was murder. That is lower airy superstition, Vol said. No, Tavena said. It is why you sealed over the killing funnel instead of burning it clean. Vol's mouth tightened. The elder counselor lifted his chin. A fireless dismissed keeper will not lecture war law. Tavena looked at him. Then ask the ones who paid for it. Blood slid from her palm when she lifted her hand. For a moment, 2 of her fingers would not straighten. She forced them open. Then she turned to the dragons. Not Arvath, this time. Behind him, Maelra shifted forward. The smaller war dragon's right horn had been broken halfway from the skull. Her bronze armor had been polished for the campaign, but beneath it, old scar tissue pulled tight across her chest in pale ridges. Tavena signed slowly. Winter Road. Show if you remember. Maelra shuddered. A handler whispered, Keep that beast back. But Maelra did not attack. She came to the gate and lowered her chest until the armor straps stretched. With one claw, she hooked the edge of the bronze plate and dragged it aside. Gasps broke through the yard. Beneath the armor was not one scar. It was a pattern. Deep chain bolt wounds crossed her chest in 2 angled lines, the exact shape of the killing funnel hidden beneath the red enamel. At the center, burned into old scar tissue, was the same mark. Sacrifice acceptable. Serev's face went white with rage, so controlled it barely looked human. Rovan whispered, That was the winter assault. Val spoke quickly. A known loss. The enemy trapped our flight. Tavena did not lower her hands. Then why does she carry command ink in the wound? Maelra tapped the ash once. Not enemy. Twice. Not storm. 3 times. Fire above. The sign scraped through Tavena's memory like a blade. Fire above meant the killing order had come from higher command, while dragons were already in flight. No beast could invent that. No handler could teach a wound to remember a lie. Serev stepped toward the gate. Who commanded the winter flight? No one answered. The silence did not protect the past. It identified it. Vol lowered his eyes. Records from that campaign were damaged. Tavena laughed once, soft and empty. Every head turned. She had not meant to laugh. It came from the place where years of silence had been stored too tightly. Damaged records, she said. Corrected routes. Sealed marks, dismissed keepers. Wounded dragons called unstable before they can be read. Val's expression hardened. Enough. He raised his flame-marked hand, not toward Tavena, toward Maelra. Back, he commanded. War beast, back. Orange fire flared from his throat. Maelra flinched. Not from obedience. From memory. Tavena moved before fear could become rage. She stepped past the map, past Serev's reach, and walked straight toward the obsidian gate. Serev caught her wounded wrist. Not hard, not to stop the pain, to stop the court from seeing her walk alone into death. Tavena, he said. It was the first time he had spoken her name without title, accusation, or decree. She looked at his hand around her wrist, then at his face. If you hold me back now, she said quietly, they will call her panic-proof. His grip loosened. The council watched. Val watched. Serev released her. Open the inner gate, he ordered. Rovan recoiled. Majesty, that dragon is unstable. No, Serev said, eyes fixed on Tavena as she lifted her bleeding hand to the lock. She is remembering. The inner gate chains began to rise. Tavena stepped through before they finished lifting. Maelra lowered her smoking head until Tavena could touch the scar over her chest. Tavena did not press hard. She laid her bleeding palm beside the burned command mark and signed with her other hand. Who corrected the order? Maelra's golden eye rolled toward Val, then past him, up to the command balcony. Every captain followed her gaze. There, above the empty royal chair, the sealed war bell began to ring by itself. Once, twice, not for council summons, not for battle. For record witness, a voice from the council gallery whispered, horrified, "The king's private command archive has opened." The private archive did not open like a door. It opened like a wound the crown had kept bandaged for 7 years. Above the empty royal chair, the sealed war bell rang until the iron galleries trembled. Black ash sifted from the volcanic walls. The campaign map shuddered in its frame, and every chain route on its surface pulled tight as if the old records beneath the mountain had taken hold of them from below. No one moved toward Val. That was the first proof that the archive frightened them more than the accused man. Lord Captain Rovan raised one hand. Close the bell. No one obeyed. His voice sharpened. By War Council authority, close the bell before it opens classified command record. Tavena stood beside Maelra inside the half-raised gate, her bleeding palm pressed against the dragon's scarred chest. Maelra's breath moved hot over her shoulder. Arvath watched from behind them, one wounded wing still lowered, his golden eyes fixed on the balcony. Serev looked up at the sealed bell. Who has authority to close my private archive? He asked. The question was quiet. That made it more dangerous. Rovan's jaw locked. No one, Majesty. But an archive opened by beast panic and fireless interference cannot be trusted. Val found his footing inside the sentence. The captain is correct. If the archive answers a dismissed handkeeper, then the record itself is contaminated. Tavena did not turn. It did not answer me. Then who? Val demanded. Maelra exhaled smoke across the ash. Tavena lifted her uninjured hand and signed once. Wound, called record. Serev watched her fingers. Say it aloud. Her cut palm pulsed. Blood slid down her wrist and darkened the torn edge of her sleeve. The archive opened because Maelra's wound carried command ink. It is not listening to me. It is listening to what was written into her flesh. The yard went colder. A young flame scribe near the map looked sick. Rovan stepped down from the gallery. That is precisely why it must be sealed. Royal archives cannot be read through a beast's scar. Tavena looked at him then. You had 7 years to read it through paper. The captain's face hardened. The war bell rang once more. A seam opened in the black wall behind the command balcony. Not wide, not enough for a man to enter, only enough for a slab of dark metal to slide out from the stone, dragging old chains behind it. The slab bore no writing, only a crown-shaped seal filled with cold blue fire. The private command archive. Tavena had seen lower records, feeding ledgers, injury marks, signal corrections written in soot and oil, but this thing belonged to kings. It did not store what the court wanted remembered. It stored what power might need to deny. Val bowed to Serev. Majesty, by crown security, only royal flame may read that seal. Then read it, Serev said. For the first time, Val did not move quickly. The hesitation was small. Tavena saw it. Serev saw her seeing it. Val lifted his marked hand toward the archive seal. Orange flame gathered at his throat, then ran down his arm in a fine, bright line. He pressed 2 fingers to the cold blue fire. The seal did not open. The orange flame guttered out. A whisper passed through the captains. Val withdrew his hand, expression smooth, but his thumb rubbed once against his palm. It refuses because the beast wound called it improperly. No, Tavena said. Rovan snapped. You will not speak over a royal interpreter. She will, Serev said. Every head turned to him. Serev did not look away from the archive. She reads under my protection. The words struck Val harder than any accusation. They did not make Tavena safe. They made harming her an attack on the king's command. Rovan's voice lowered. Majesty, this is a private archive. If she touches that seal, she touches crown memory. Serev looked at Tavena's bleeding hand, then at Maelra's scar. Crown memory has already touched dragon flesh. No one answered that. Tavena stepped toward the archive slab. Her knees did not shake, but her injured fingers did. She tried to lift them and felt the cut across her palm pull open again. Blood welled bright and immediate. Serev moved as if to help. She stopped him with one look. If he steadied her now, the council would say his mercy guided her reading. If she failed alone, they would say fireless hands had no place near royal record. So Tavena climbed the black steps by herself. At the top, she faced the cold blue seal. It did not burn with heat, it burned with refusal. Behind her, Val said, Careful, Tavena. If the archive rejects you, it may take what remains of those hands. Serev's gaze cut to him. Tavena did not grant Val the pleasure of fear. She placed her bleeding palm on the crown-shaped seal. The archive did not accept her. It tested whether the wound Maelra carried and the blood Tavena offered belonged to the same truth. Pain struck so hard her vision went white. 2 of her fingers went numb. For one breath, Tavena could not feel whether they were still open. Not flame, memory. Snow under dragon wings, chain bolts opening like iron flowers, a command horn sounding from above, not ahead. Maelra screaming through smoke. Arvath circling back when the route told him forward. A rider falling without a sound. Then ink. Black command ink spreading across a winter order. The archive slab cracked open by 1 finger's width. A strip of old war vellum pushed out. No hand held it. No voice read it. Tavena had to. She gripped the edge with her wounded fingers and pulled. Blood smeared the vellum. The words did not vanish. They darkened. Serev stood below her, rigid as carved stone. Tavena read. Winter assault correction. Northern Ridge route amended after royal clearance. Losses acceptable if enemy chainbolt nests are exposed before main fire. The council erupted. Enough, Rovan said. That is classified. Tavena kept reading. Interpreter note. Original route did not contain sacrifice clause. Correction entered through private command authority. Serev's flame mark flickered once. Whose authority? He asked. Tavena looked lower. The signature space was covered by black wax. Not broken wax, living wax. It crawled when her blood neared it, pulling tighter over the name beneath. Val's face had gone still. Too still. Tavena pressed her bleeding thumb to the wax. It hissed and peeled back just enough to reveal one line. Not a name. Not yet. A title. Authorized by the hand that held command in the king's place. Val exhaled softly. Not relief. Recognition. Careful majesty, he said. That title is older than your reign. Lord Captain Rovin's hand dropped from his sword belt. Only Tavena saw it. Not fear of treason. Fear of a name almost spoken. For the first time that day, no one looked at Tavena. No one looked at Val. They looked at the empty royal chair. No one said the title aloud. That was how Tavena knew it still had power. The empty royal chair sat above them in the command balcony, black, high-backed, and untouched since Serev had descended into the yard. A moment ago it had been furniture. Now every captain, scribe, and counselor looked at it as if the chair itself might answer, authorized by the hand that held command in the king's place. Val Merrick lowered his chin just enough to appear respectful. Majesty, I advise restraint. Serev did not look away from the chair. From truth? From a fireless handkeeper forcing a royal archive to dishonor the throne. There it was. Not denial. Reframing. Tavena felt the shift move through the War Council. Val did not need to prove the record false. He only needed to make the truth sound like treason against the crown. Lord Captain Rovin stepped forward. The private archive has exposed sealed Regency language. By war law, further reading requires council closure until proper royal review. Tavena looked down from the black steps. Proper royal review had 7 years. Rovin's eyes cut to her. Careful. The word was quiet, but not empty. Serev turned at last. Who held command in my place? No one answered. Not because they did not know. Because the title had teeth, Val spread his hands. Majesty, many hands serve a throne before a reign is secure. Guardians, regents, war tutors, blood council witnesses. To drag old emergency powers into open yard judgment based on a beast scar and her bleeding palm would be reckless. Her bleeding palm opened what your flame could not, Serev said. Val's flame mark flickered at the insult, then steadied. Or contaminated what should never have answered her. Tavena flexed her wounded hand. Pain flashed white through her fingers. 2 of them still felt distant, as if the archive seal had taken their names and not fully returned them. She curled them slowly until sensation burned back into the joints. Maelra rumbled behind her. Not anger. Warning. Tavena turned her head and signed with her uninjured hand. I hear. The archive slab shuddered. A second strip of vellum began to push through the crack, then stopped. The cold blue fire in the crown seal bent toward Tavena's hand, but did not open wider. It had taken her blood once. It would not take the same offering twice. A young flame scribe whispered, It refuses. Val seized on it. There, the archive has closed its witness. End this before the dragons learn to perform accusation whenever a dismissed keeper raises her fingers. Tavena looked at the crown seal. No, she said. It is not closed. Serev's gaze sharpened. What does it want? She looked back toward Melra's scar, then toward Arvath's wounded wing. A second wound. Rovin swore under his breath. Val's face went very still. Tavena saw it. So did Serev. A second wound, Serev repeated. The archive accepted Maelra because command ink was burned into her flesh. But 1 wound proves 1 slaughter. Tavena swallowed against the pain in her palm. If the same correction touched another dragon under another order, The archive can no longer call it panic, accident, or enemy trap. Rovan stepped in front of the map. No more beasts will be brought into Crown Record. Arvath's head rose behind the gate. The old dragon had been quiet since Maelra showed her scars. Too quiet. His eyes fixed not on Rovan, not on Vowel, but on Tavena's hand. Then he moved. The entire yard recoiled as Arvath dragged his wounded body forward. His left wing scraped across the ash, leaving a black, wet line behind him. Every chain in the gate tightened. A handler shouted for hooks. No one dared throw one. Tavena lifted her hand. Not command. Please. Arvath stopped inches from the inner threshold. Serev looked at him, and something in the king's face broke smaller than rage. He is injured, Serev said. Yes, Tavena answered. And he has been trying to tell you since before my name was cut. Val snapped. Majesty, if you let that creature into the yard, every captain here will know the throne can be moved by beast display. Serev did not look at him. Open the inner gate wider. Rovan stepped forward. Majesty, Serev's voice dropped. Do you wish to stand between a dragon and the wound your council refused to read? Hovan stopped. The chains lifted. Arvath entered the command yard with the slow agony of a mountain dragging itself through fire. He lowered his left wing near Tavena, but not fully. The armor plate there was locked with 3 black clasps stamped by the War Office. Tavena knew those clasps. They were not for protection. They were for hiding. She reached for the first. Val said softly, If you touch royal armor without permission, you confirm unlawful interference. Tavena did not move. Serev stepped beside her. Permission granted, he said. The first clasp opened. Then the second, the third resisted. Tavena's wounded fingers slipped on the metal. Blood streaked the black clasp. Serev reached out, then stopped before touching her hand. He understood now. If he opened it for her, the wound would become royal discovery, not dragon witness. Tavena clenched her jaw and forced her numb fingers around the clasp. It broke open. Arvath's wing sagged. Under the armor, near the root of the wing, was not one tear. It was an old burn hidden beneath fresh injury. A circular command brand seared into the scale, where no rider would see it from above. At its center was the same mark, sacrifice acceptable. But around it, half buried under scar tissue, ran a second ring of ink. Tavena leaned closer. The letters were not enemy code, not campaign shorthand. Archive language. Read it, Serev said. Val's voice cut in. Majesty, I forbid. The yard froze. Even Rovan looked at him. Val had spoken too quickly, too high, too much like a man protecting a door he had once opened. Serev turned slowly. You forbid? Val bowed at once. I misspoke. I meant the law forbids. No, Tavena said, eyes still on Arvath's wing. You meant yourself. Arvath lowered his head until his breath warmed the archive seal. The cold blue fire flared. The half-born vellum shot from the slab and unfurled across the black steps, dragging ash and sparks with it. Tavena did not touch it this time. Arvath did. One claw pinned the vellum open. The letters darkened beneath the weight of his wound. Tavena read before anyone could stop her. Second correction. Lower ridge retreat amended. Dragon loss acceptable if royal ascent remains protected. Serev went still. Royal ascent? He asked. Tavena looked lower. The signature space remained hidden, but the title beneath it burned clear. Regent Guardian of the Crowned Child. No one breathed. Not Tavena. Not the council. Not the king. Because the hand that had signed slaughter had not merely held command in Serev's place. It had held Serev before he was old enough to hold the throne. The first chain hook flew before anyone found courage enough to speak. It struck the ash 3 feet from Maelra's foreclaw and skidded in a shower of sparks. The dragon recoiled. Every warbeast behind her felt it. Wings snapped half open, armor plates clashed, smoke burst from 12 throats at once, turning the command yard into a furnace of fear. Men in the galleries shouted over one another. A flame scribe dropped his torch. Somewhere above, a captain screamed for hooks, collars, fire nets, anything that could make the court feel in control again. Tavena lifted her wounded hand. Wait! Only Arvoth obeyed. Maelra did not. Her broken horn scraped the black stone as she backed away from the thrown hook, and her golden eyes clouded with old winter terror. The scar on her chest pulsed around the command mark. Sacrifice acceptable burned red beneath the skin, as if the past had just been struck open. Val's voice cut through the smoke. You see it now. This is what happens when beasts are allowed to answer pain instead of command. Tavena turned. He stood beside the command brazier, one hand held over the coals. Between his fingers, a pinch of red dust glimmered. Not a grain beneath a nail this time. A handful. Serev saw it too late. Stop him, he ordered. Val opened his fingers. The dust fell into the brazier. Red flame roared upward, bitter and sharp. The smell hit Tavena first. Iron, old blood, hot stone after lightning. The same scent that had clung to the troughs. The same scent hidden beneath Val's nail. The same scent that made wounded dragons look guilty before anyone asked why they were afraid. Varzalt. Maelra screamed. Not at Tavena. At memory. The smaller dragon lunged sideways, striking the inner gate with her shoulder. The chains shrieked. Guards scattered. A rider lost his footing and tumbled down 3 steps before another caught him by the cloak. Val pointed at Tavena. She triggered them. No, Tavena said. But the word vanished beneath the roar. Rovan seized the moment like a weapon. Contain the fireless woman. If she can signal them, she can set them loose. 2 guards moved toward her. Serev drew his sword. The blade flashed black in the red light. Touch her and lose the hand. The guards stopped. Val's eyes hardened. Majesty, she is standing at the center of an active dragon breach. She is standing where your salt drove them. Val did not flinch. War salt is a lawful stabilizer under campaign emergency. Tavena stared at him. It does not stabilize pain. It makes fear obey the nearest lie. A ripple passed through the lower handlers. They knew. Not enough to speak. Enough to look down. Maelra slammed the gate again. A crack opened in the obsidian hinge. Rovan shouted, Archers! Silver-tipped bolts rose from the upper gallery. Tavena's heart stopped. If one bolt struck Maelra now, every dragon in the yard would answer. Not as soldiers, not as witnesses. As slaughtered things finally given permission to become what men feared. No arrows, Serev ordered. Rovan's face flushed. Majesty, if the beast breaks, no arrows. The king's flame mark flared dark blue, and every bow in the gallery lowered by force of instinct before obedience could pretend it had chosen. Tavena looked at Maelra. The dragon was no longer seeing the yard. She was seeing snow, chain bolts, fire above, a command that had told her body it was acceptable to die. Tavena stepped toward her. Serev caught her arm. Do not! His grip was gentler than before, but fear made it iron. Tavena looked up at him. Smoke moved between them. His face was carved hard, but his eyes betrayed him. He had watched dragons die for law. He had never watched law try to kill the same dragon twice. If she breaks the gate, Tavena said, they will call her proof. If you go in there, she may kill you. She may, Tavena said. But Val needs her to. Serev's grip tightened once, then loosened. The release cost him. She felt it in the pause between his fingers and her sleeve. Tavena walked into the dragon circle without armor. The court went silent in pieces. First the handlers, then the scribes, then the captains, as if each rank understood a different part of the madness. Val did not shout. That was how Tavena knew he was afraid. She crossed the ash slowly, both hands visible. Her injured palm burned with every heartbeat. Blood slipped from the cut and fell in small red drops behind her. Maelra swung her head toward the movement. Black-red flame gathered in her throat. Tavena stopped. She did not lift a command sign. She lowered herself to one knee. The galleries hissed. A dismissed handkeeper kneeling before a war dragon looked like surrender. Tavena knew that. Let them misunderstand. The dragons would not. With her uninjured hand, she touched the ash. Then, her bleeding hand. She drew 3 marks. Not command. Not blame. Here. Maelra's flame trembled. Tavena drew another sign, slower. I came back. The dragon's ruined horn, lowered by one breath. Behind Tavena, Val spoke softly, but his voice carried because everyone wanted permission to believe him. A pretty performance, but ask why the beast obeys her blood. Tavena did not turn. Neither did Serev. Maelra took 1 step forward. The ground shook. Tavena stayed on her knee. Every instinct in her body screamed to move. Her burned palm pressed into ash. Her numb fingers twitched uselessly. She forced them open one by one. Maelra's snout stopped inches from her face. The heat of the dragon's breath should have burned her skin. Instead, it shook. Tavena lifted her hand and signed into that trembling breath. You were not made to die unseen. Maelra's eye cleared. Only a little. Enough. The dragon lowered her head until the broken horn touched the ash beside Tavena's hand. A sound rose from the other dragons. Not a roar. Not obedience. Answer. One by one, they pressed their claws into the black floor, repeating Tavena's mark. Here. 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 Val's face lost color. Serev stared at the signs spreading across his command yard. Every dragon was not calming because Tavena controlled them. They were calming because she had given them a place inside the truth. Then Arvath moved. The old dragon dragged his wounded wing forward and carved a sign larger than all the rest. Not to Tavena. To Serev. Learn. The court did not understand. Tavena did. Her breath caught. Arvath struck the ash again. Learn hand. Then every dragon in the black area lowered its head toward the king, not in submission but in demand. Serev's sword hung useless at his side. His flame mark flickered. For the first time in his reign, royal fire had no answer, and every dragon waited for the dragon king to kneel. A captain laughed once, too loudly. Then no one joined him. The sound died against the black stone while the dragons kept their heads lowered and their claws pressed into the ash. Not submission, not threat, demand. Serev stood in the center of his own command yard with a sword in his hand and no language sharp enough to answer them. Val saw the weakness before the court understood it. Majesty, he said carefully. Step back. Serev did not move. Val's voice softened into something worse than command. Counsel. A dragon king cannot receive instruction from a dismissed, fireless keeper before the war host. Not here, not with enemy horns sounding. The council will be forced to record it as command instability. Rovan stepped beside him. If the king submits to beast pressure, emergency authority may pass to the sealed war office until order is restored. There it was. Not a blade. A law. Tavena rose slowly from the ash. Her wounded hand throbbed so hard each heartbeat seemed to split the cut wider. Maelra's breath warmed her back. Arvath's old golden eyes remained on Serev. He is not asking you to submit, Tavena said. The court turned toward her. She looked at Arvath's carved sign. Learn hand. He is asking whether your fire can learn what it has been burning over. Val laughed under his breath. Poetry will not hold a campaign line. No, Tavena said, but your lines send dragons where they die. The laughter vanished. Serev sheathed his sword. The sound of the blade sliding into black steel carried farther than a shout. Rovin's face tightened. Majesty. Serev looked at Tavena. Teach me. The words hit the yard like a crack through crown stone. Val took one step forward. Do not make that record. Serev did not look at him. It is already being made. Above the balcony, the sealed war bell gave one low pulse, as if the private archive had heard and did not intend to forget. Tavena's mouth went dry. This was not pardon, it was not trust. It was something more dangerous for both of them. Public correction. A king admitting before the host that his fire could not read what a woman without flame had seen for years. She lifted her injured hand, then stopped. 2 fingers refused to straighten. The court saw, Val saw, his eyes brightened. Tavena forced the fingers open one by one. Pain crawled up her arm, white and cold. She would not hide it. Let them see what the dismissed hands had already paid. Not that hand, Serev said. Quietly. Too quietly for softness. Loud enough for recognition. Tavena looked at him. He held out his own right hand, palm bare, sword calloused, ringed with old burn scars near the thumb. Use mine. A ripple moved through the galleries. Tavena stepped closer, near enough to see the blue-black edge of the flame mark at his throat, near enough to smell smoke and iron on him, not Val's bitter war salt. Something older. Something contained until it hurt. If I teach you wrong, she said, the dragons will know. Then do not spare me. That is not what I meant. I know. The answer settled between them, hard and intimate. Tavena took his hand. The entire war host inhaled. His skin was warm, but not because of royal fire. The hand in hers trembled once. Not fear of her, restraint. Serev Kade had spent his life making power move outward. Command. Burn. Strike. Rule. Now he had to hold still while a woman he had erased shaped his fingers into a language older than his throne. Tavena bent his first 2 fingers. Pain seen, she said. His jaw tightened. She turned his wrist inward. Do not rise. She lowered his palm until it faced the ash. Breathe under it. Serev repeated the motion. Too sharp. Arvath's eyes narrowed. Tavena corrected him at once. No, you are ordering the pain to obey you. Serev went still. Val seized on it. Even the beast rejects him. End this. Tavena did not let go of Serev's hand. Again. Serev looked at her, and this time the court saw what obedience cost a king. He tried again. Slower. Less command in the wrist. Less conquest in the fingers. The sign became smaller. Almost nothing. A hand making room instead of taking it. Arvath exhaled. The smoke left his teeth in a long gray stream. Maelra lowered her broken horn until it touched the ash. One by one, the dragons answered with the same sign. Pain seen. The yard changed. Not healed. Not absolved. Changed. Serev stared at his own hand as if it had betrayed him into truth. Tavena released him. Her palm left blood on his skin. Val's gaze dropped to that blood. Then he smiled. Not broadly. Not foolishly. A man smiles that way when a trap closes exactly where he hoped it would. Witnessed, he said. Rovan turned sharply. Lord Interpreter. Val raised his voice before the captain could stop him. Let the record show. The Dragon King has accepted blood. Sign instruction from the dismissed handkeeper under active breach conditions. By campaign law, Any command given through her language now binds the throne unless disproven by higher private authority. Tavena felt the word strike. Higher private authority. The old title in the archive stirred like a thing, waking under stone. Serev's flame mark flared. You planned this? Val bowed. I preserved law, Majesty. No, Thavena said. Everyone looked at her. She had gone cold from wrist to throat. Val did not want Serev merely shamed. He wanted Serev linked to her signs so that every dragon accusation could be made to look like the king's own command turning against him. Above the empty royal chair, the private archive bell rang again. Once. The black wax over the old signature began to move, not peeling back, changing. Letters crawled through it, forming a new command line across the exposed vellum. By blood sign witness, summon the higher hand. The command yard trembled. Then the empty royal chair filled with cold blue fire. The first thing the empty royal chair did was cast a shadow. There should have been no shadow. Cold blue fire filled the seat without body, without crown, without face. Yet on the black wall behind it, a hand appeared, long-fingered, ringed, resting where a ruler's hand would rest when granting death from a safe height. Every captain in the yard forgot how to breathe. Rovan dropped to one knee, not slowly, not ceremonially, as if his bones remembered the shape before his mind could stop them. Serev saw it. Sorit Tavena. Val did not kneel. That was worse. He lowered his head with the careful restraint of a man greeting something he had expected but still feared. The higher hand answers, he said. Serev's voice cut through the blue light. Name it. Val lifted his eyes. The archive has not named it, Majesty. Then why do you sound relieved? A thin pause. Val smiled without warmth. Because old authority still recognizes law. The War Council stirred behind him, grateful for the word old. Old made the accusation distant. Old made slaughter sound like inheritance. Old gave frightened men a place to hide. Tavena stood at the foot of the archive steps, with Serev's blood-marked handprints still fading from his skin and her own palm burning open beneath torn flesh. The black wax on the vellum crawled toward the blue fire, as if trying to return to whatever hand had first sealed it. She moved before it reached the edge. Val saw her. Do not touch that record. Tavena caught the vellum with her wounded hand. Pain flashed through her numb fingers, but she held it down against the step. The record was summoned by blood sign witness, she said. It stays where the witness can read it. Rovan rose halfway. You will not imprison crown memory under your hand. You tried to imprison dragon memory under armor. A few handlers looked away. Val stepped toward her. You are clever, Tavena. Clever enough to know this has moved beyond your little soot signs. That chair belongs to Regency authority. If you keep forcing it, you are not exposing murder. You are challenging succession. There it was again. Not denial. A higher fear. Serev descended one step toward her, but did not touch the record. Who taught you that phrase, Val? Val's gaze flicked to him. War law teaches any loyal servant what must not be disturbed. Tavena looked at Val's right hand. For one breath, his fingers had moved. Barely. A small turn of the wrist. 2 fingers bent inward, thumb hidden. Not court gesture. Not flame command. Silent handwrite. Her blood went cold. You know the hand, she said. Foul stille. The yard heard it because silence had made every small thing loud. Serev turned. What? Tavena did not look away from Val. He just signed. Val laughed softly. A desperate accusation. No. Tavena lifted her injured hand, though 2 fingers trembled. You signed close mouth, not to the dragons, to the record. The cold blue fire in the chair leaned toward Val. Only slightly. Enough. A murmur tore through the galleries. Serev's face darkened. You told this court silent signs were contamination. They are, Vol said, in unmarked hands. Tavena heard the hidden answer. In unmarked hands. Not in the hands of those who had used the language before her and buried it when dragons began answering pain instead of fire. The archive bell rang once. A new line burned across the exposed vellum. Interpreter correction requires hand witness. Rovan stepped back as if the words had teeth. Tavena read it aloud before anyone could smother it. Interpreter correction requires hand witness. Val's expression hardened. Serev's voice lowered. Who witnessed the winter correction? The black wax pulsed. The shadow hand on the wall moved one finger. Not toward Serev, toward Tavena. She understood before the court did. The archive did not want more royal flame. It did not want Val's polished mark. It wanted the language that had been used to bend the order. It wanted a hand witness. And if she was wrong, the archive would take what Val had warned it might take. What remained of her hands. Serev stepped in front of the stairs. No. Tavena looked at his back. The word had come too fast. Too raw. Not command enough to hide fear. Val smiled. Wise Majesty, at last. Tavena said, Move. Serev did not. Tavena, you said I read under your protection. I did not say I would watch the archive maim you. If you stop me now, Val wins with my hands still attached. His shoulders went rigid. She came beside him, close enough that only he could hear the next words. You cannot protect truth by standing between it and the wound. For a moment, the Dragon King looked at her as if every throne law he had ever trusted had failed to teach him what she had learned in feeding soot. Then he stepped aside. Not far. Enough. Tavena climbed to the vellum and placed both hands over the command line. One bleeding, one trembling. The blue fire did not burn upward. It sank into her palms. Her fingers curled against her will. The archive forced the old sign through her hands. Closed mouth, then another, turn root, then a third. So sharp pain tore a sound from her throat. Nama hidden. Across the yard, Val's right hand twitched in perfect answer before he could stop it. Serev saw. Arvath saw. The dragons struck the ash together. Witness. The vellum blackened around Val's interpreter seal, not burning away, revealing what had been pressed beneath it. A roster strip slid from under the wax, narrow as a knife. Tavena's blood touched the edge. Words darkened. Hand witness of correction. Val Merrick, junior flame scribe to the regent. Guardian. The court erupted. Val's face went empty, not defeated, emptied of pretense. Then the blue fire in the empty chair bent down like a listening head, and a second line appeared beneath his name. Correction authorized by Regent Guardian. The black wax surged over the final name before it could form. Val moved faster than any guard. He seized the war-salt brazier and hurled it at the archive steps. Red fire burst across the vellum. Tavena threw herself over the roster strip. Serev shouted her name. The dragons roared. And beneath Tavena's bleeding hands, the last covered word began to burn through the wax from below. Red fire did not climb. It hunted. The war-salt flames crawled over the archive steps in thin, hungry streams, searching for vellum, blood, and old truth. Tavena lay over the roster strip with both hands pressed flat, her cut palm reopening against the heat. Smoke filled her mouth. Her fingers wanted to curl away. She forced them down. The covered name burned beneath the wax, letter by letter, trying to live. Val shouted above the roar, "She has contaminated the record with dragon blood and her own. Pull her away before the archive accepts false witness." No one moved fast enough. Serev did. He crossed the burning steps and dropped one knee beside Tavena, not touching the roster, not stealing the reading, only putting his body between her and the guards already reaching for hooks. No one pulls her from that record, he said. Rovin's voice struck from the gallery. Majesty, the archive is under assault, fire breach. The witness must be severed. Tavena lifted her head just enough to see him through smoke. Rovan was not watching Vol. He was watching the name. That told her where the last door stood. Maelra, she signed weakly. The dragon moved. Not forward in rage, forward in witness. She lowered her scarred chest to the edge of the steps, and Arvath dragged his wounded wing beside hers. One by one, the other war dragons pressed close behind them until the command yard became a ring of scale, smoke, and remembered pain. Vol's face tightened. Majesty, if you allow beasts to surround royal evidence— They are not surrounding it, Tavena said, her voice raw from smoke. They are keeping you from reaching it. A low sound moved through the dragons. Agreement. The war salt fire snapped toward Maelra's scar. She flinched. Tavena felt it as if the pain had crossed into her own ribs. She raised one bleeding hand. Not command. Share breath. The sign shook. 2 fingers barely opened. Serev saw the failure and held out his hand beside hers. Show me, he said. There was no time to refuse him. Tavena shaped his fingers with her blood-slick hand. Palm low, wrist softened, breath given, not taken. Serev turned toward Maelra and made the sign. Not perfectly, not with Tavena's fluency, but without conquest. Maelra stopped flinching. The blue fire in the empty royal chair bent toward him once, then toward Tavena, then toward the dragons. The private archive bell rang a single deep note. The war salt flames thinned. Vol saw it, and for the first time, his control cracked. He snatched the dragonbone dismissal blade from the ash and drove it toward the roster strip. Serev caught his wrist. The crack of bone against royal grip sounded louder than the fire. Drop it, Serev said. Vol smiled through pain. If that name appears, Majesty, it does not free you. It condemns the blood that raised you. Serev's hand tightened. Tavena looked back at the wax. The final black seal split. A letter appeared. Rovin stepped down from the gallery. Not hurried. Not afraid now. Almost relieved. The wax peeled wider. Regan's guardian Hovan Kade. The yard did not erupt. It emptied of sound. Even the dragons went still. Serev released Vol's wrist slowly and turned. Rovin Kade stood below the command balcony, one hand resting on the old ring at his thumb. Until that moment, Tavena had thought it was a captain's ring. In the blue archive fire, its carved crown came alive. Not the crown of the reigning king. The crown held for a child. Serev's face changed in a way Tavena had not seen before. Rage could have protected him. Command could have disguised him. This was neither. This was a wound that knew the hand that had made it. You held command in my place, Serev said. Rovan inclined his head. I kept the throne breathing until you were old enough not to burn it down. You sent dragons into slaughter. I spent dragons to preserve a king. Arvath's claws struck the stone. Not spent, Maelra answered. Not yours. The other dragons followed one by one until the ash filled with the same 2 signs. Not spent. Not yours. Rovin looked at them with open contempt at last. This is why beasts should never have been taught witness. They do not understand kingdoms. Tavena rose unsteadily, the roster strip in her bleeding hand. They understand being used and buried. Rovin's eyes moved to her. And you understand nothing of command? I understand the difference between a death accepted by the one who walks into it and a death hidden under another name. Valu found his voice again. Majesty, the old regency seal was lawful. Whether unpleasant or not, the correction stands under emergency command. The fireless woman has exposed nothing but the ugliness of necessary war. Hovan lifted his ring hand. The empty royal chair answered. Cold blue fire gathered around the carved regency crown. Serev stepped toward him. Take off that ring. No. Every sword in the yard shifted. Rovan did not flinch. By regency continuance, if the Dragon King refuses lawful campaign command during active Eastern threat, emergency authority may return to the Guardian office until the roster seals. Serev's flame mark ignited dark blue. You have no Guardian office. I am no longer a child. No, Rovan said, but your dragons have refused you. Your interpreter has been exposed under blood sign contamination. Your war council has witnessed instability, and your campaign map still bears your seal. The red enamel lines on the map began to glow. Val's smile returned. Not victory, survival. The eastern horn sounded a third time. Moonrise was coming. Across the map, the first assault chains tightened by themselves, pulling toward the gate. Every dragon in the yard snarled. Rovan raised his ring higher. War command reverts until order is restored. The empty royal chair burned brighter. Then every chain on the campaign map snapped toward Tavena's bleeding hands. The youngest handler in the yard dropped his hook. Not from fear, from shame. The assault chains leapt from the campaign map, like living iron, flying toward Tavena's hands with the force of royal law behind them. One wrapped around her left wrist. Another snapped for her right. The pain in her cut palm burst open so sharply she almost fell. Maelra surged forward. Arvath roared. Serev moved faster than both. He caught the second chain before it closed around Tavena's wounded hand. Iron burned against his palm. The old Regency command fought him, dragging his arm toward the map, trying to make his strength serve the route already written for slaughter. Rovan's ring blazed cold blue. Do you see, Majesty? Even the map knows where command must return. No, Tavena said through her teeth. The chain on her wrist tightened. She did not try to break it. She laid her bleeding fingers against the iron and read what it wanted. Forward. Obey. Die cleanly. Every link carried the same lie. Vowel stood beside the map, breathing hard, his face pale with soot and triumph. The roster is sealing. The eastern assault cannot be stopped now. The war horn sounded again. The thin chains on the map pulled toward the gate. The dragons snarled as the old command tried to drag their bodies into a route their wounds had already condemned. Tavena looked at Serev. His hand still held the second chain, skin burning where iron met royal flame. He could have cut it. He could have ordered it destroyed. He could have made this another king's rescue and left the court a way to say she had been spared, not believed. Instead, he lowered his sword. Tavena, he said, read it. Rovan's eyes sharpened. Majesty. Serev's voice rose over him. Read it before every captain here. The chain on Tavena's wrist trembled. She understood what he was giving her. Not protection in front of truth. Room for truth to stand. She lifted her bound hand. Blood slid down the iron links and fell onto the ash. Her fingers shook, but she forced them into shape, not forward. The dragons stilled. Tavena twisted her wrist against the chain until pain brightened behind her eyes. Not obedience. The map groaned. Red enamel split along the first assault route. Rovan thrust his ring higher. War command reverts to the Guardian office. Serev stepped toward him. A guardian protects what cannot yet stand. His dark flame mark ignited, not red, not orange, but deep blue edged with black. You use that office to send living dragons where dead ink could hide them. Rovan's mouth hardened. I preserved your reign. You preserved my throne by teaching it to feed on wounds. For the first time, the war council had no law ready. Serev turned, not to the captains, not to the empty royal chair, but to Tavena. Teach me the refusal. The yard changed around those words. Tavena stared at him. The chain had cut into her wrist. Her palm was open. 2 fingers were numb. The court that had laughed at her now watched the Dragon King ask for the language it had tried to destroy. She shaped the sign slowly so every man could see. A dragon may refuse false fire. Serev copied it, not perfectly, but without pride. The dragons answered. One by one, claws struck the ash. Refuse. 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 The campaign map screamed. Its red enamel rivers cracked. Brass pins flew from enemy towers and scattered across the black floor. The first assault chain snapped free of the killing funnel, then fell dead at Tavena's feet. Rovan staggered as his ring split down the center. The cold blue fire in the empty royal chair turned white. Vowel lunged for the fallen chain. Serev caught him by the throat and drove him to his knees. Not hard enough to kill. Hard enough to make every courtier hear bone, meat, stone. You falsified interpretation, Serev said. Vol choked out, I preserved command. You salted wounds to make truth look like rage. Vol's eyes flicked toward Rovan. Too late. Tavena saw it. So did Serev. Rovan stepped back. Arveth moved first. The old dragon dragged one claw through the ash, carving the final witness mark before the throne, the council, and the war host. Hand taught lie. Maelra answered beside him. Ring ordered slaughter. Then every dragon in the black eyrie lowered its head and struck the ash once. Witness. The private archive bell rang. The sound did not ask permission. The black wax on the old vellum burned away at last, exposing the full command line beneath. Regent Guardian Rovan Kade authorized slaughter correction. Hand witness. Val Merrick. The words hung in cold blue fire above the map. No one could seal them. No one could call them Beast Panic. No one looked away. Rovan's face emptied of all command. Serev, he said. And for one breath he sounded not like a captain, not like a regent, but like an old man reaching for the child he had once held. You do not know what enemies were coming. Serev looked at Arvath's wing, at Maelra's scar, at Tavena's bleeding hands. I know who you made pay for my fear. He removed the cracked regency ring from Rovan's thumb himself. Rovan did not resist. Perhaps because the dragons were watching, perhaps because the chair had stopped burning for him. Serev handed the ring to Tavena. The council recoiled. She did not take it at first. This is not mine. No, Serev said. It is evidence, and I am done keeping evidence above the hands that can read it. Only then did Tavena close her fingers around the broken ring. Serev turned to the war host. His voice carried through the command yard, through the galleries, through every chain and gate and old law built to make dragons obey men who never learn their pain. By my blood, by my throne, and by the witness of the Black Eyrie, the Eastern campaign is suspended. Rahovan flinched. Val went still. Serev continued. Lord Captain Rovan Kade is stripped of regency authority, war office command, and every seal held in my name. Lord Interpreter Val Merrick is stripped of title and bound for falsified correction, war salt abuse, and murder concealed under royal ink. Val tried to speak. Arveth growled. He closed his mouth. Then Serev looked at Tavena. The yard held its breath. Tavena Oris was not pardoned today, he said. Her throat tightened. She did not need pardon for reading what the crown refused to face. The words struck harder than any apology could have. Serev stepped back, behind her, not beside her, not before her. behind her. The law of dragon command is corrected before every witness here. From this day, no dragon of the Kade line may be flown by fire alone. No root may seal without wound witness. No command may stand if the dragon refuses it through pain sign. And no hand that reads pain shall be called contamination because it carries no flame. The old command chains overhead loosened. One by one, they fell open. Tavena looked at the dragons. Arvoth lowered his scarred head. Maelra followed. Then all 12 war dragons bowed, not as beasts before a master, but as witnesses before the one who had finally let them be heard. Tavena lifted her wounded hands. For a moment, they barely obeyed her. Then they did. She signed the first clean order of the day. Rest. The dragons exhaled together. The sound moved through the black eyrie like rain after fire. Serev stood behind her, silent until the last chain stopped swinging. Then, softly enough that only she heard, he said, "I replace the only voice my dragons trusted." Tavena did not turn. "Yes, I will spend my reign repairing that. Do not spend it on words." "No," he said, "on law." Only then did she look back. There was no softness in him that erased what he had done. No easy devotion, no sudden claim, just a king stripped to the truth of his mistake, standing behind the woman he had dismissed while the entire war host watched her hold his broken law in her bleeding hand. Tavena looked down at the ash. Arvoth had carved one final sign there. Not command. Not witness. Name kept. For the first time that day, Tavena Oris closed her hands because she chose to. And every dragon in the black eyrie waited until she did.